Hi guys, Reyndal here. Astrius is finally coming to our divisions, and if you're thinking of meta-defining units that kind of shape the meta when they're released, like Oberon, like King Mont when he was released, like Black Rose Helena, Astrius is in the same category of unit, so he is a fantastic unit, and people could realistically have very great use out of him. But if you don't have the Viz to pull him right now, or if you're not using water as a main element for some reason, you don't have to get him. I don't think any player that doesn't own him will be completely unable to fight in guild battles or in other PvP game modes. I don't think he's a must for PvE, and the Warriors of the Crystal are going to be rerunning quite frequently, so if you miss him out now when you see people play him and you feel like you would like to have him at a later date, you will have other occasions to get him, so you don't have to break the bank for him necessarily. He is still a fantastic attacker that's able to take out just about anyone, and he is strong enough to be in a rainbow team if that's what you like to do. So today we'll take a look at how to build him and which kind of team he would fit, the impact I think he'll have on the meta, and just generally taking a look at his kit. Let's begin. Astrius is mostly an attacker. He's a unit that has really high damage. He's able to multi-hit, so he can pop Courage and then kill you. He has a guaranteed hit attacks. He's got the ability to ignore slash resistance and defense, so he is very hard to mitigate in general. He can also increase your team's accuracy in an AoE, so even though he has his own guaranteed hit, he can be fairly accurate, so he can use the rest of his kit, and he can make the rest of your guys accurate as well. So generally very good unit. He himself is quite bulky and has access to courage as well, so he's hard to remove from the board. Now he is a cost 100 unit, you should expect to have to pity if you will pull him, and then he's a katana user that has low mobility. He has 3 move, 1 jump, and no way to increase this in his kit. Now if you own Kane's TMR, you have a really good tool that allows you to give him movement +1 and haste on self. It's one of the ways to make him move a little bit better, but generally he's a unit that's going to stay in place and he'll hit enemies when they eventually come to him more than anything else. His TMR could come in handy for a couple of players, mostly for bravery farming, so if you don't own Cecil's TMR or Velric's TMR, this will allow you to just have it on auto, let your team run easy story missions, and farm their bravery alone, because the unit that equips this TMR will use the buff, increase the bravery of a couple units, and it is going to stick in between battles. So that's the main use for this piece of gear. Outside of that, it's got good stats, like good defense, spirit, and accuracy are all fine, and it increases agility, attack, and bravery in an AoE. It's not bad, but there are so many TMRs that are meta-defining that you're not going to run this, I think, in any type of serious PvP, although it might see some use in some PvE levels, I guess. Now, let's take a look at Astrius' stats, and it was kind of hard to find people comparable to him. He has a very powerful stat line. I think Oberon, as a unit with a very good stat line, is a good comparison. Oberon has slightly more HP than what Astrius has, and then Astrius has better everything else. He's got more attack at 567. He's actually got more attack than a unit like Aranea that has top tier damage, so you can definitely expect high damage from him. But then he's faster with 68 agility. He's got good luck at 246, so he's going to be very accurate, and he's got 8 innate spirit for some reason, so he's also fairly hard to kill. Just really good stat line overall, and then he's got good resistances pretty much across the board with positives 10 to slash, pierce, missile, and magic, and only a weakness to strike attack, which barely exists in the game. In terms of resistances to status effects, he is resistant to disable, which is quite a common status effect that can be annoying, but doesn't have any resistance to stop or charm, so some of the major status effects are still on the table for him. Overall though, incredible stats. He will hit hard, be fast, and be durable altogether. Now, let's look at his passives. First of all, I think you always want Wild Instinct on. It increases his accuracy by 25 and gives him 40 defense penetration. He does have another ability that gives him defense penetration, but there are tanks that walk into fights with upwards of 80 defense, and with this and his other buff, you're basically going to ignore that stat, which makes it very worthwhile in my opinion. Then the accuracy up is really good. You might be thinking, he's got a guaranteed hit, I don't need accuracy. Well, yes, but his guaranteed hit has an awkward pattern and is not his highest damage ability at all. Ideally, if you have a very high accuracy build, you can use anything in your kit, deal a whole lot more damage, and then in the scenario you're blinded, or for some reason the enemy has crazy evasion and you can't hit them reliably, you still have the guaranteed hit as a tool. So that's what I would run all the time, and then probably the first passive up top with attack and acquired AP, especially for a scenario like Guild Battle where you have 2 fights, you might end up burning through your entire AP pool even if you use bells, and this helps you alleviate that risk. Otherwise, the Rigid Body passive with HP and slash resistance is pretty much always good, so you have a bunch of good options really. In terms of counter abilities, you have 2 choices. I would say the safe choice is going the Strider counter, which has 20% chance to negate incoming damage by 30%. I like this because it will proc no matter what range your enemy's at. If he's hitting you from very far away, this is the only counter from Astrius that has a chance to actually do something, which is really good. But then his unique counter is kind of insane if it procs, so it has a higher chance to proc at 30%, but again, limited range. So there are some scenarios where it will have a 0% chance to proc. If it does though, you counter the enemy before he deals damage, so that's already pretty cool. Sometimes you just kill the enemy and you won't even take the attack, and then he gains some AP back. So again, in a long fight, or if you're not running bells on him, this is the passive you have to go for. Now, let's look at his main job, and his first ability has Remove Re-Raise, which I really like. Now, this guy, just like Noctis, has the ability to hit twice in a row. We'll talk about that when we talk about his limit break. But because of that, he can pop Courage and then kill someone, or kill someone, have Re-Raise happen, and then kill them through Re-Raise. And with this ability, technically, if you hit someone that has both Re-Raise and Courage, you could kill them entirely with one single ability, which is quite interesting. Then he's got an ability that gives him Courage, and as long as Courage has not been used, he will have 40 more defense penetration and a decreased AP consumption by a certain amount. So it's a really, really good buff. He can use it twice, which sets you up for 2 different battles. Again, really good for Guild Battle mostly. So that ability is one of the abilities that define him and make him a good unit. It is quite selfish, and he's got another AoE buff that we'll talk about soon. Then he's got a cross-shape attack that has a really weird pattern, but will hit very, very hard. So it decreases defense by 30, and then deals a 165 mod attack, so that is really good. Decreasing defense before damage typically makes this one of his hardest hitting abilities. Then his guaranteed hit has a really weird pattern where it hits in a line at some distance. It is a guaranteed hit with a 200 mod, which is really good. Mods of 200 are very high damage abilities, so I like that. And then he's got his AoE buff, which for allies increases slash resistance and max HP for 3 turns, and then for himself allows him to heal himself back for 30% of the damage he deals for 3 turns. Now he deals very, very high damage, so for him that will actually be relevant healing. And then if you're equipping a rune with a healing power-up passive and or a set of the spirit or defense type on his defensive side runes, you can increase this healing even more, and he becomes a lot more sustainable. And then, you know, slash resistance and max HP are good for just about any unit, so the AoE portion of that buff is also very relevant. Just make sure if you're in a short map that he uses Courage first, so you might have to turn this off for some fights, just because I think his other buff is more important than this one. And then finally, last attack in his kit is a Barrier Breaker. So if you thought reducing enemy defense, removing re-raise was enough, well, he also ignores enemy barriers with this, and it's a 200% attack. So it removes the barrier, then deals that hit. It's going to hit hard enemies no matter what. This makes him an almost impossible to build against attacker, because he has ways around any type of damage mitigation. Now, let's look at his Limit Break, which is also quite defining. So what his Limit Break does is, first, it decreases slash resistance by 38%. Now, the one big weakness of this Limit Break is that it's single target. You can't do that to multiple targets at once, but you decrease their slash resistance by 38, then you do a 200 mod attack, so just like his Barrier Breaker or any other, it's going to hit very hard, and then for the next 3 turns, whenever he uses an ability or attacks someone, he's going to have an additional hit, just like Noctis' ability, except this one is physical scaling, so it is actually going to hit fairly hard on top of any other hit you do. And just like Noctis, you hit people in an AoE, you're proccing this in an AoE, so it is a fantastic ability. Finally, Will Weaver's sub-job, I don't think we'll see much play, just because he has 3 really good sub-job. The main reason I guess you could run this is so you have a long-range attack that hits the enemy in his AP, or I guess another ability that uses slow, but realistically his other sub-jobs are really, really good. So let's take a look at these. First, he's got the Sniper sub-job. Now, this one has another way to increase his defense penetration, but you already have that. The main reason to be running this is if you want another type of damage that's not slash attacks, so this gives you missile attacks that you could use, but outside of that, I don't think it will see too much play because Strider has a lot of value. Still, this gives you the ability to decrease the enemy's agility, potentially disable them, or potentially decrease their movement, which could be used in some strategies, I guess, for manual play. Still, I think most players will be using the Strider job because it has a bunch of really good AoE buffs. You can increase attack and spirit for allies around you. You can also increase accuracy for allies around you and his own slash resistance penetration by another 30. So, innately, this guy does not have a lot of slash resistance penetration. His unique swords that will be released alongside him gives him 20, and then with this buff, you can move up to 50. Which makes all attacks from his main job a lot more reliable as well. He will, a little bit like Esther, struggle with having too many good buffs though. He can increase, slash resistance and HP, he can increase accuracy and slash resistance penetration, he has to use his guts, he has to use bells. You'll have to make decisions when you run him, but there are a ton of good tools in your kit, basically, if you're running this sub-job, which makes it very, very good. Now, where would he be in a team? Well, he's the type of unit that can single-handedly carry a team in terms of damage, so you could pair him with a support any tank, and you would still be able to take down the enemy team just because his damage is really high. So I would see a couple possible variations. I think a team that I've seen on the JP side quite often is Astrius, Celeste, and Velis. So Velis just hastes everybody, and then Astrius goes murder mode. You could replace Velis with Tidus, have an AoE haste, with somebody like Miranda potentially, hasting and quickening. There are a ton of versions of this team, but that is one that could be very good. You could also pair him with magic attackers, so you have different types of damage sources. I think Summer Elsirel is fantastic because of her AoE water attack up that just is good for everyone on your team, but you could also just use more Imperil, the enemy's water resistance, use that with Astrius. There are a bunch of good teams like this. Or you could just forego a tank and go for a team that's designed to kill the enemy before your own dies, pairing him with somebody like Farm that's going to remove the re-raises and etc. So Astrius can just focus on killing the enemy once, and then you could also have missile attackers that soften up the enemies before he comes into contact with them, like Lara or Winter Victora. So there are a bunch of different teams, but usually his role is the same: walk to the enemy and kill them. That's what he's going to do. Now, in terms of builds, he ends up with just insane stats. You'll see on the right side what I'm currently running. He does have 2 water partners with their mastery ability in this specific example, and honestly, there are a lot of good vision cards for him. I am using the ones that you see on this side, but Thanks for the Votes is also a fantastic vision card. The Astrologer vision card is also really good. There are many options to make him good. In this specific scenario, though, he ends up with 9,000 HP, which isn't bad. 1,600 attack is definitely top tier. And 116 agility is Starlight Elena and Light Evasion team level of agility. It's very, very fast, and nobody quite catches up to that. So that part, insanely good. He's got okay-ish defenses with a little bit of defense and spirit, but honestly, he's mostly going to survive thanks to his HP pool, which will take 2 hits for most enemies to take down, and then courage, so overall 3 hits before he dies. He's got some good slash resistance, good missile resistance with this build. His mods for damage don't seem that high if you're taking a look at the water 55 and slash 17, so that's acceptable, but he also has 62 man-eater with his physical attack, so that is where most of his damage is going to come from. And then, a lot of defense penetration before adding in the buffs, and some slash resistance penetration again before adding in his buffs. So he is going to be very good. This is not a very accurate build. Yes, he does have 450 luck and 80 something accuracy, but if you really wanted to be able to use any of your moves against an evasion team, you would have to replace his accessory with something like an Alexandrite ring and then maybe fit in another card for accuracy. So I would make some switches. This is not the versus evasion version of the team. Still though, really good stats and a very powerful unit overall. Now, let's look at his runes that I'm using for this specific build. They are on screen. I think for the defensive side, if you're expecting to fight some evasion teams, you want the luck, It just helps you use whatever ability you have and not rely on the guaranteed hit too much. If you're not fighting any evasion team, you could potentially run the defense or spirit sets if you really wanted to. I think there's a bunch of good options, and then the passives run whatever you like, but the HP 10% and luck 10% are non-negotiable. The rest, you can use whatever you would like. You could either go the elemental resistance route or the attack resistance route. Some rune that I really like are stop resistance, just because I don't like having my units be stopped, and then agility break resistance, because an enemy star like Elena that makes you slower and then laps you is very annoying. Now, granted, he is very fast naturally, but still, it's not fun to get your agility reduced by anybody. On the offensive side, I think you have a couple different options depending on what you want, but in most scenarios I would run double agility for that agility +3 just to make him a little bit faster, and then the last rune you could have either accuracy or attack rune just for the little bit of extra stats. You don't need a 3 set for agility with this guy, because the third piece of agility just gives you extra evasion, and he does not care about dodging the enemy team's attack. Just like for the defensive side, if you are expecting to fight evasion, you should probably run an accuracy set. That one is not beatable if you're expecting to fight full evasion. So this is the main change that I would do. In terms of rune on the offensive side, there are so many good runes for them. I have a couple of them on screen. Those that I have not been running are mostly the reaction rate down, which can be really good if you're thinking raid or Bucks events. You probably want max damage up. So there are another couple of good ones that I don't have in here, but really you can't go wrong if you're using the passives that I have here. So overall, should you build him or pull him? Well, the Warriors of the Crystal, as I said in the beginning, will be rerunning quite frequently. If you do pull them, you can hard quest them, you can always get them via the Mug Shop, or get more shards via the Mug Shop once they are MLB'd. So there are some options. You don't have to play the limited time game with him too much. He will be a top tier unit, definitely. He's going to be strong. I expect him to appear in guild battle, in arena, and all kinds of PvP, just because he has such a well-rounded kit. But you might not have all the tools to make the best use out of him. A lot of what makes water good is time limited. If you don't own Celeste, you don't have, the best water tank. But the same can be said about the best ranged water attackers, which are Winter, Victora, and Lara Croft. Not every player have them. The Vision card, Lara Croft, that gives luck up for water units is really good, and if you don't own that, your accuracy game for water units is a lot worse than what some other players will have. So if you don't have all the tools for him, maybe consider what you could build. Try building him in the War of the Visions Cock Builder to see what the tools you currently own allow you to do while using this unit. Don't just pull for him because content creator hype him up. Pull for him if you have a plan to actually use him, is where I'm getting at, I guess. With that said, let me know your plans. Let me know whether you're skipping him or not, or how you're going to be running him. I'm very excited to hear it. Personally, I'll try a couple pulls for him, but I don't have the resources to pity him, so I'll probably just do the 3 first steps of his 9-step and hope to be lucky. And if I don't get him now, well, hopefully I'll get him naturally when the Warriors of the Crystal rerun in some future date. So this is it from me. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.